Welcome to this Monday, March 2nd, 2015 regular Mercer Island City Council meeting. We've completed a Mercer Island Transportation Benefit District meeting that started at 6 and ran for just 30 minutes under the capable leadership of Benson Wong, the president. And now we're on to our regular meeting. Karen, could you call the roll?
Councilmember Debbie Bertlin. Here. Councilmember Jane Baum. Here. Councilmember Mike Ciro.
Here.
Councilmember Joel Wachs.
Here.
Councilmember Benson Wong.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Dan Grouse.
Here.
Mayor Bruce Bassett.
Here. Thank you. First order of business will be appearances, and this will be a time when anybody may address the council on any issue they wish to. You'll have 3 minutes to do that. The general guidance is please be civil. The more detailed guidance is on the wall behind one of our scouts back there. So if you're so inclined, you're welcome to go and have a look at that, but it really does boil down to just be civil. There will be, and I would encourage you to wait, if you at all can, a second opportunity to speak tonight to the Agenda Bill 5048 regarding the moratorium on town center building permits. And so we've got a number of folks here who are here just for consent calendar items, or at least a small handful of folks who are. I'd like to let them get out the door and not be saddled with staying through a lot of comment on the moratorium. And I assure you, you will get your chance to speak to the moratorium if you'd like to in just a few minutes. So if you could hold your fire on that until we get through public comments on other things at this time, that would be much appreciated. So we are open for public comments now. Ira, welcome.
Ira Appleman, 443.
Ira, I just have to pause because you said President Wong, I think, when you said hello to him, but I just get hey Bruce.
Well, he didn't say hello to me.
Well, okay. Now I know.
So I figured I had to be more formal. Okay. Ira Appleman, 4436 Ferncroft Road. I have some comments on the moratorium during the official public hearing later, but for now I want to confine my remarks to the community engagement plan as described last meeting. First, the most striking feature of the community engagement plan, as considered here on this room on February 23rd, is that it was planned and approved by the council without any community engagement. The public was not asked to provide any input on how to better gauge public opinion. City staff, which hasn't done a very good job gauging Islander opinion, essentially proposed what it's been doing all along that hasn't worked. The blow-ups associated with the Mercer Island Library remodel, the parking garage located on the open space master planned as West Hill, and town center bungling are three examples where the city was out of touch with Islanders. Maybe it should have occurred to someone on city staff or on this council to have one or more public hearings before adopting a public engagement policy. I cannot critique the entire plan in 3 minutes, but I can point out its greatest weakness, which is lack of credibility. The website and related materials, such as the weekly, are propaganda pure and simple, where never is heard a discouraging word. The city doesn't post the position of the opposition, but merely states its case over and over. In the recent blow-up on the parking garage on West Hill, next to the community center, neighbors produced the Luther Burbank Master Plan, which clearly shows West Hill master planned as open space. Deputy Mayor Grouse said staff made a mistake in the master plan. But I circulated materials from April 2006 showing that not only was it not a mistake, the City Council had specifically approved that designation at one meeting and specifically considered and confirmed that designation at the meeting where the master plan was approved. Nevertheless, the city's posts continue to claim West Hill was not open space and was an, quote, undesignated area, unquote. The first principle of an effective public engagement plan is for the City Council and staff to provide the truth, even when the truth doesn't advance their preferred policy. By presenting the truth, but presenting the truth, including the position of the opposition, isn't part of the approved public engagement plan, but it should be.
Thank you. And I'm going to pause for a second. Folks outside this room, can you hear us in here? Okay, excellent. If one of you at the staff table could just pull the blind up so they've got just a little bit better view, that would be great.
You can tell them they're...
Welcome. There's a chair. Yeah, and yes, there are chairs in the front row here if you'd like to come sit real close to us, and probably a few others. So you can stay back there if you like, or out there if you like, or you can come on up. Okay, we're...
Suggest that the older people get to sit?
Well, I'll have to ask you folks to all self-manage, because I'm not going to try and arrange seating here. Welcome, Tom.
Hello, Tom Acker, 24270 4th Avenue Southeast. I'm actually leaving to catch a plane, so I'm going to address the moratorium first, if that's okay.
Yep, go ahead.
I think you all know my thoughts. I want Heinz included. I don't think it's fair, just, or maybe even legally appropriate for them to get special exclusions from the moratorium, and I don't think it's appropriate for people like the Cassans and Leon, who's here, who've been working with the city to be punitively targeted and not given the same considerations. Having said that, I want the moratorium complete in its entirety and to cover all aspects of the town center that is over the basic building height. So I hope you give it severe consideration tonight when you deliberate and when you hear the public comment, to make sure that you're doing not just what's legally the best decision, but also what's right. I've circulated a PowerPoint, which I know all of you have seen, and many of the folks in this room, but I was down there today, and again, walking around, and actually, Nancy was sitting right there. I had her voice in my head from one of the meetings where we had over 125 people, and she said, I want to be able to see the sky. And I was on the QFC side of the block, and I was visualizing 5 or 6 stories, depending on which number you use. They would go into the Heinz development if it goes forward, because at their meeting the other day, they said that in order for them to build, they have to have it to pencil out to 4 or 5 stories, depending on which side of the street you're looking at it from. And you can't see the hills. We have trees. We have parks. We have a quality of life here that we're trying to preserve. And if you put a building that's that big in the heart of our city with the degrading level of services that we're facing, as well as the impact to the school systems, it could severely impact not just the town center, but everybody on the island. This is not an island issue, or a North End issue, or a town center issue. It's an island issue. So I just strongly encourage you to do the right thing. And I know there are a lot of external influences that are being pushed and applied to y'all, but do the right thing. So that's all I had for tonight. Thank you very much. I'm really sorry I'm going to miss this meeting, but I know it's going to come out with the right result, hopefully. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a safe flight. Anyone else? Please, not moratorium issues if you're not catching a flight. Welcome.
It's very short, so you can go ahead and push that button tonight. Cynthia Winiski, 2750 68th Ave Southeast. I just wanted to point out the timeline of the communication plan that I noticed that the moratorium is over. I know it's sort of half moratorium, half timeline, but the moratorium ends before the council gets to take a look at the codes and start the approval process. I just want to point that out. Seems a little contradictory to what we're all trying to do here. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come on up, Ralph.
Thank you. This is about impact fees. It's not necessarily directly to moratorium yes, moratorium no, so I thought I'd take the opportunity to talk about that. I've sent you an email that talked about a preliminary analysis on impact fees. I guess you guys are going to be looking at that 2 weeks from now. I believe the city is right now not charging appropriate parks or traffic impact fees for new development. Of the 30 Puget Sound cities that surround us that charge impact fees, it seems like the average traffic impact fee is about $4,000 per unit and about $4,000 for parks per unit built. So, a simple example of our city's insufficient impact fees, there's currently a 209-unit complex being built in our town center. And according to the Mercer Reporter, the total traffic impact fee being paid by that developer is $10,000. That comes down to $47 per unit. the average in our cities is $4,000. So that's about 100-fold less. And I mentioned this earlier, our city in 2012 spent $1 million to install 2 traffic lights out of our general fund. Assuming we had 25 new short plat single-family home developments in the past 2 years, and let's say 250 multifamily units developed, which I think is a good guess, we had an opportunity cost of $1.5 million we did not collect. And it could be even higher given our more expensive land costs here on Mercer Island compared to other cities. You know, in contrast, our school district has been collecting school impact fees from multi-unit housing. It's in the process right now, I believe, of recalculating those based on our community's new investment in schools, based on the bond passage. But I do understand that the city prevents them from collecting impact fees on single-family short-platted homes. And I'd appreciate that if you could find out if that's true and if you could change it. Regardless of how the city chooses to grow, I think it's important that we change our impact fees. I grew up on the island. I looked at Groveland and Clark Beach. They were beautiful 40 or 50 years ago. It was amazing the infrastructure that was built then. It was built to that quality that infrastructure is still there, but it needs attention. I understand the city is undergoing a study to replace Groveland's dock, and they're actually investigating changing that fixed pier into a floating pier just to save money. And I think that's very sad that we're not replacing in-kind capital improvements with in-kind. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome, Meg.
Thank you. Excuse me, I'm not catching a plane, but I'm sick, so I'm going to leave as soon as I make this comment so I don't infect anybody else here. And I just have 2 things I want to say tonight. The first one is that I do not think Heinz should be... Oh, excuse me. My name is Meg Lippert, 4052 94th Avenue Southeast. The first thing I want to say is that I do not think the Heinz property should be exempted from the moratorium. And the second thing I want to say is that I hope that our community will retain a village feel and not be filled with high-rise buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. Get well. Welcome, Dave.
Hi, Bruce. My name is David McCann. I'm 8182 West Mercer Way. Been a resident on the island for 8 years, and thanks to Bruce I was invited to sit on the Planning Commission. However, tonight I'd like to kind of bring a couple of ideas to you relative to dialogue before we get into moratorium. In the many meetings I've had the privilege of sitting on in the Planning Commission, there's actually a very healthy debate, I would say, inside the Planning Commission about growth and about the almost train that we're trapped on called the Growth Management Act of the state, and the things we have to do as a city to kind of conform with the alleged mandates of the Growth Management Act. And I actually read our original plan. The Planning Commission goes through it word by word. Scott Greenberg, whatever he is, has to rewrite the thing every 7 years. It's a pain in the proverbial. However, what really bothers me, and I want to bring it to your attention, and I have brought it to you and Dan before, is that the Planning Commission represents, to some extent, the community to do the work you've asked us to do. The feedback loop to the council is not good. There appears to be some obstructive federal or state law about planning commissions talking to council, and so really we're not having enough dialogue about the issue of growth. And what I learned as a citizen shocked the heck out of me, which is over about the last 10 years, there have been over 1,000 additional housing units added to the island. There's been about 500 or 600 in downtown, and then there's been 500 or 600 units in fill-in. And I used to write traffic jam software in a prior life for a company I ran, and I raised with the planning department the issue of, are we really modelling for the right congestion? And the only thing I would say is, you know, I'm not anti-growth, and I'm on the Planning Commission at your behest, but I would tell you that I think we need a much healthier concept of dialogue, which I flagged to the city staff back in October and said, why are we not consulting sooner? And so I would quite like to chime in on the idea that we do need to expand consultation. This is a really quality of life issue for a lot of us who moved here, myself included. I think you guys passionately care about your town, as the rest of us do, so it's not that this group cares and you don't. I think we all collectively care about our town. But I do encourage us to not rush. We're rewriting a plan, and we need to take our time and really think about how much growth do we take on. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle Goldberg, 2212 78th Avenue, Southeast. I hate when people get up here and say I wasn't going to speak, but what David McCann just said really resonated with me, and I know I've started this conversation with some of the council members at the open house and other times. There's a perceived mandate for growth under the Growth Management Act, and I think that if you come from that bent, Bruce and I talked about this. He said, if you don't have the density in the town center, do you want it in your neighborhood? And that's kind of like the question of, when did you stop beating your wife? It assumes that density is required, and it is coming from certain assumptions that if you don't see beyond and see the greater question, you won't ever look for different answers. And so I would echo what Mr. McCann said. There are ways to work within the Growth Management Act that don't require taking all that density that people think is required. And there are experts and consultants out there who have been working with other groups who have been trying to push back against density, and they would be invaluable to this debate. I really think that, I know that Deputy Mayor Grouse was talking about the dialogue and the level of discourse, and I'm one of those who think that if we can work together, we can do what's best for the community. We have to figure out what the community wants, and there are ways to work this out. But if you aren't going to open up to the idea that density isn't required, we're never going to get beyond that. So I have names of people. I've talked with people in Marin who are fighting this. I've talked with people in Shoreline who are working against the transit-oriented density, and I'm really hoping that we can talk to consultants and really work together to find a solution that's really in the best interest of everyone in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else on other issues than moratorium, town center, or have to catch a flight or go home sick? Okay, with that, I'll close public comments. Thank you very much for holding your fire to everyone else. We'll move to the consent calendar. We have several items, payables, payroll, and 4 agenda bills. Do I have a motion to accept the consent calendar?
I move to accept the consent calendar.
I skipped right over the minutes, didn't I? Yeah. Let's do the consent calendar, because I'm halfway through it. And, and I'll come back in 2 minutes.
Second on the consent calendar.
Okay. Anybody feel like they've got to pull anything off the consent calendar? I'm going to just make the comment that staff seems to have done a great job on our road projects, both of which came in significantly under budget. So, yeah, but I will not do any more, and on time, and I'll do not more to pull those because we've got other stuff to work on tonight. So, with nothing pulled, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, back to the minutes, which I skipped.
I move to approve the regular meeting minutes of the City Council meeting February 2nd, 2015.
Second.
Any corrections, changes? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move to a regular business agenda bill 5048, public hearing regarding moratorium on town center building permits. And give me just a moment here to speak to this, and then we're going to have Katie give us a presentation. So there has been a fair bit of public interest in this, as evidenced by the crowd of folks here tonight who are not home watching whatever's on Monday night television, but are here with us. There is certainly interest on the council with regards to this issue, and questions have been asked of Katie. The problem that we have had over the last couple of weeks is that our outside attorney on this has been pulled away by a family medical emergency and has not been available to consult with us with regards to the questions you've raised or the questions the council has been raising. With that as the backdrop, what I'm going to suggest to the council this evening, and I'm looking for show of thumbs on this, is that what we will do this evening is have the staff presentation, which Katie's prepared to give us. We will take public comment from you, but then we will defer for 2 weeks to our next meeting on council deliberations, discussion, decision-making on this, so that we have the chance to make sure that the questions you've raised and the questions that the council's raising are properly considered and we get clear responses from our legal counsel on this. So that's the plan of attack I propose for this evening. I'm looking right now for council thumbs up, thumbs down, and whether that plan works for you or not.
I just have a couple questions before we do that, Mr. Mayor. So I'm concerned that with the legal opinion that it sounds like we're going to give, of course, it has the burden of attorney-client privilege, that's going to handcuff our discussion as the last attorney-client privilege did.
So, Katie, can you help us here?
Sure. I'm your city attorney, and at times I do go get outside counsel to assist us in some of these more specialized matters, which is what I did. And you've gotten legal advice from us. There's been a lot of other questions and such raised in the community, but the legal advice you need to seek is from your city attorney and any outside counsel I choose to bring in to help you with these decision makings and help you analyze the legal risks and liability of various things that you do as you go along. This is a legislative hearing. This is not a quasi-judicial hearing. You're not being asked to analyze who has the better legal argument. I fully agree that not being able to share with the community what's information and advice is given to you under privileged communications, it does bind your hands. But that's the way of it. I'm not allowed to waive that privilege, and you certainly can't do it as council members individually. So that's what creates an issue for making sure that all of this is fully vetted. That said, you can certainly understand, you have the opportunity, you'll have the opportunity in March 16th too in an executive session to discuss with our attorney these various issues and for us to help work through those legal matters as we go along, just as we've done in the last couple of weeks, so that you can understand it for your own purposes. The issue here before us today is gathering the public testimony and going forth with that, so you're going to be able to hear what the citizens have to say about it. You're not here to have to decide whose legal analysis is better.
So I'm not prepared to talk about what's proper to be an executive session, but it's not quasi-judicial.
Correct. It's legislative. This is a legislative thing.
And just because you're talking to an attorney doesn't necessarily make it, as we've discovered in prior cases, doesn't necessarily make it attorney-client sanction privilege.
What we've been giving you is privileged communications. You can't waive those privileged communications.
We can waive them.
We as a body can waive them.
As a body, you can't do that individually. I cannot do it for you. I can't.
Why does it need to be attorney-client privilege with a legislative action?
You're asking for legal advice as to your legal risks with regard to procedural actions that you're taking on regulation. We've done that other times, and one I could give you right offhand is Tent City. You recall that? You have lots of legal advice on that one. So it's a privileged communication. I don't know that I'm really prepared to sit here and say, here's all the different things that make it a privileged communication. It's a privileged
Katie, I think
communication.
the question is, why do we have privileged communication? Mike, I don't want to misspeak, but I think what's being posed is why would we have privileged communication on this?
To help advise you of any legal risks and liability.
Without that.
Well, let me try to help a little bit. The problem, Mike, is that if there is litigation from anyone afterwards, and the question becomes then through the discovery process, they ask for information from the city. If we have waived the attorney-client privilege, basically all the legal advice we will have received would become known to the opposing party in the litigation. And that puts our lawyers and the city in a very prejudiced position in trying to defend itself in the litigation.
Correct.
So you, unfortunately, if you waive any aspect of attorney communications, then you waive the privilege to all the attorney communications, and we're just, it's like we're sitting like a dead duck then in terms of defending ourselves in litigation.
Okay. So, and I want to go actually one step further because we've talked a little bit about this. It would be my intent, council members and public, to have an open hearing this evening at which you'll be able to tell us your thoughts on this, and we will incorporate those thoughts into the conversations we are having with external counsel in the coming 2 weeks. But I would not preclude you from then participating in a second public input at our next meeting as well. So I'm not trying to suggest that we would take public input tonight and that would be it. You'd still have a chance to participate again in 2 weeks if you choose to.
You could keep the hearing open to obtain additional public input.
So
that's what you wanted. Okay.
Okay, James.
Are we at questions now?
Well, I'm at, we're at questions about this procedure, if you have questions about this procedure, yeah.
I'll ask my question later.
Okay.
It's not about this procedure then.
Okay.
Okay.
But what I'm suggesting is that we go through case presentation, public input, but then defer further effort on this evening until we have further, the benefit of further input from outside counsel. So
we might want to talk a little bit.
Well, that's
I'd like it sounded okay until I can't imagine that the council members won't have something to say.
Okay. If that's where the council members want to go.
I do have a question then that pertains to what will happen then if we postpone the end of if we extend the public hearing for 2 weeks. That does not extend the end of the moratorium 2 weeks, am I correct?
That's correct.
No.
That's correct. Okay. Can tonight we take any action to extend the moratorium beyond the current date?
So why don't I give my presentation, because I think that I can answer a couple of those procedural questions, because my intent in doing this presentation tonight is to walk you through the process piece. So we'll set aside the legal questions and we'll get those additional answers and such that you've asked and some of the citizens have asked, so you can be fully advised. So on February 2nd, 2015, this council legally adopted a moratorium on the acceptance and processing of building permits in the town center. There were 2 exceptions made. One was for the project commonly referred to as the Hines project, and the second was to have the moratorium apply to buildings over 2 stories. That was all done in ordinance number 1504. And under state law, the city council, once you've adopted a moratorium, within 60 days has to hold a public hearing, and within 60 days has to adopt findings of fact. In Ordinance 1504, we put today's date, March 2nd, as the day for the public hearing. So I think in partial answer, Councilmember Baum, to your question, just setting it off 2 weeks hurt us in terms of violating the statutory requirements under the moratorium laws? No. We have 60 days to do that. We'll be well within the 60 days. This part where you're talking about some technical legal issues. So the original moratorium was adopted via an ordinance. You can only amend an ordinance by another ordinance. The vehicle here today was for findings of fact was a resolution. It's a little bit more fluid. It's allowed to supplement the findings of fact that the council already made at the February 2nd date, so it supplements it. However, if there are changes that you might want to make, such as extending the moratorium, you can only extend this moratorium for an additional 2 months, or if you want to change the Hines exemption, you have to do that via an ordinance. My understanding is that there's a desire to bring back that vehicle so that the council has that flexibility to address those different issues. I intend on March 16th to bring back a draft ordinance, so you have the technical legal vehicle to make such changes. Does that help your question? Did that answer your question? Okay. And that's actually the extent of my presentation. What next will happen is that you'll hear from citizens. I'll have 3 minutes each to speak, and you can keep the hearing open so that on March 16th you're able to allow them additional opportunity to speak. We'll close the hearing and the public testimony, and at that point in time, then you can start having discussions about what you want to do at that point, if there's anything to do, and what findings of fact you'd like to see put into either the ordinance or the resolution at that time.
Mike?
Thank you, Katie. Can you talk about finding of fact? We've gone through the Koval experience, and there's 19 pages of finding of facts, and they're very explicit and detailed for a 5-acre piece of property, granted quasi-judicial. But our finding of facts that we have here are minor, very minor in comparison. And can you talk about the finding of facts that we might expect for this legislative action, and how those finding of fact might be added upon?
So and you're kind of mixing apples and oranges, because Koval is a long plat and came under a different section of the law and different requirements where you have to make findings with relation to what you, the council, wanted to see in order to make it consistent with the code. Here, the council's job before it legislatively is to establish why do we want this moratorium and the factual basis why the moratorium will be needed. The preliminary findings that I heard in January, remember we all did that in a pretty quick time frame after the planning session, indicated that everybody felt things were hurried and rushed. You heard some of that earlier already. Things are feeling a bit little hurried and rushed. Let's take a step back so we can look at these processes that we had before us. One of the process pieces was how to engage the citizens. Some of that was addressed I guess it was just last week at the last council meeting. So so there's two things that can happen. You can do findings of fact saying, here's why we wanted this, here's the factual basis for wanting this. And then the other piece you can also do as well is talk about the work plan to address the ultimate issue. And the ultimate issue here before the council, what do you want the town center to look like and how are you going to get there? You've already started to put some of that plan into place. Does that help?
So the findings of fact, those are something that, could you take public comment or suggestions for finding of fact, and then amongst the staff, you kind of, because a fact is a fact. Technically, Debbie's facts or my facts or Dan's facts. If they contribute to the quality of the action, can you include those facts?
Well, my suggestion is what you do tonight is to do the public hearing, because I think it's first important to hear the citizens' comments, and then based upon that, understand what factually would be appropriate. If you're asking, that's unusual to do, but if you have some suggested findings of fact, ultimately at the end of the day, these are the council's findings of fact. They're not the staff's findings of fact. So it's the council that decides what findings of fact that they want to address this moratorium. And they don't have to be, again, comparing that to Koval, it was a totally different set, apples and oranges. I just want to be clear.
Okay. Anything else for Katie before we move on to public input? Okay. Katie, thank you very much.
Yeah.
A couple more comments from me, and then we'll launch into this. As Katie said, you'll have 3 minutes to address the council, and please begin by giving us your name and address. As I said before, the general rule is just please be civil. Lots more detailed rules, but no need to go into those. Largely because I just want to remind us all, again, we are all Mercer Islanders. We're all looking for a better future for our community. We have different visions of exactly what that looks like, but we really are all headed in the same direction. And I just encourage everybody to keep that collaborative spirit in your comments and in your thoughts. I was out riding my bike this afternoon and looking at the daffodils coming up and the cherries in blossom. It's a beautiful time to be out in our community, and just keep that in mind as you...
Mr. Mayor, let's go.
No, we got to have a little bit of waxing eloquent here before we go. So, all right, with that, we are open to public comments on this agenda bill. So welcome, whoever wants to come up. Those who want to go after, please don't be shy about starting to line up so that we're not waiting for people to get up and get down after each speaker. Welcome, Tom.
Good evening. Tom and Nick, 6231 Island Crest Way. My comments tonight are on the moratorium visioning in the community engagement process. On the moratorium envisioning, it's likely going to take a lot longer than 4 to 6 months to sort out this impact fee issue. I'd recommend that north end, anything above 2-story moratorium be extended to at least be coincident with the amount of time it's going to take us to publicly vet this input fee situation, and make no exceptions during that period for Hines or for anyone else because of the critical interaction between those two decisions. My guess is it's going to take probably 12 or 18 months or more to sort this all out. Further, the 1994 vision, it's in major need of update too. It's never been considered valid or relevant by many islanders at this point, even back in 1994, when it was considered basically by many to have been pushed down the community's throat by a group of partisans using a stacked deck process. And I'm concerned that the same community engagement process now already looks and smells a lot like that 1994 process. And I think that, for example, there's no provision for a non-advocate review. As I mentioned earlier, the process for selection for the various groups, including the stakeholder group, I think is really suspect. And now this recent Tom King to Judy Cliburn troubling letter even underscores that concern more of basically under-the-table discussions that aren't being done to the public. So basically, my concern is the community engagement process is broken, and it really needs to be fixed to be meaningful if this whole process is going to be successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome, Leon.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Leon Cohen, address 9219 Southeast 33rd Place, Mercer Island. As a resident and citizen from the island and as a property owner in town center, I'm requesting the City Council reconsider the exemption of the Hines project from the present moratorium and not exempt them. And if you find that they must be exempt, the property at 2411 76th Avenue Southeast should also be exempt, and any others in the same posture, for the following reasons. 2411 can submit within 4 months plans and all documents necessary to obtain a building permit, and I've sent this into the city on a schematic basis. I think it's important to treat the Hines project, to treat the Hines project different than other properties in connection with the moratorium are against laws and shows a city bias and is unfair. Not treating property owners the same who are in a similar posture can potentially create an unnecessary hardship for the property owners and could create a contingent liability and lawsuit against the city. So I ask you, when you deliberate, to ask yourself, how is the Hines project different than the 2411 project or others of similar posture? Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi there. My name is Larry Sargent. I live at 2920 Southeast 76, the Islander condominium. It's like half a block from the proposed development. And I've been a Mercer Island resident since 1955. My folks built a house in the north end, and when they sold that, we moved into the Islander about 42 years ago. So I have quite a long perspective on the business center. We've lived near it my entire life. Watched it develop from almost a pasture and forest into what it is now. Some development was good, some of it not so good. And I'm very concerned that exempting one protects his developer from the review process is not a good idea for Mercer Island. First of all, having a 5-story building right across from Albertsons is going to wall off a large part of the hillside there from the rest of the town center. And the town center, because of all the development in recent years, is already becoming kind of a sterile canyon land. There's only a few places where people really go, like Starbucks or places where there's a little more open space. What's going on with current development is it's simply cutting off access of people to the street. There aren't very many citizen amenities. There's no way to go through these developments like there used to be, where you could cut through some of the other, parking lots and stuff. It's becoming a canyon land, and I don't think that's what we on Mercer Island want. I don't think it's almost what anybody in this room wants. So you're going to hear from quite a few people on this, but I want you to recognize that what this meeting is about is not about abridgment of property rights or legal opinions. It's really about what the future of Mercer Island is going to be and whether it's going to be amenable to its citizens in the future years. There's plenty of examples we can look to of places that are really kind of great developments. Look at Kirkland, for example. I mean, the waterfront there is not cut off from the lake. Every summer you see people walking around. There's all these stores and shops and restaurants you can go to. We need to look at a plan like that and not at what this place is becoming. We're not beholden to the Growth Management Act. We're beholden to the citizens of Mercer Island and how we want it to be. And we don't want it to be some sterile, high-density block system that is starting to become. I mean, none of us want that. So I really urge you to not exempt Hines from this moratorium, and also take all the time that we need to get Mercer Island the way we want it. There's, like I say, there's plenty of examples. I've been to a development in Sedona called Tlaquepaque. I don't know if some of you have seen that. It's a really beautiful commercial development. It's got fountains and restaurants and art galleries. It's a beautiful spot. A lot of people love going there. So we can find all kinds of design plans that don't wall us off from our neighborhood and that draw people to our town center. So I urge you to not exempt Hines from this moratorium and go about a much better and much more inclusive way of including people's opinions in the development of the town center. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
My name is Lynn Walsh, address 7710 Southeast 29th Street. I'm here to speak in favor of the Hines project. I'm co-owner with my brother Dean Bitney of one of the parcels in the Hines project. We grew up on the island here. He said 1955. My family moved here in 1951. I went to East Seattle grade school, South Mercer Junior High, Mercer Island High School. My brother's a lifelong resident, and he operated Bitney Insurance in the village for probably close to 40 years. So we understand Mercer Island. After my brother retired, we put the property on the market in 2012. We received numerous offers. Real estate salesmen and developers made all kinds of promises. We finally settled on Hines because they seemed to fit with our Mercer Island values. Everyone we talked to remarked how ethical they were. Our dealings with them have proved that out. They've been very upfront and straight with us. So we made a deal with Hines in 2013. The time frame has been extended twice since then, and now it's supposed to close. Our deal is supposed to close in April of 2016. I know some of you here want to stop Hines. I just want to be up front with everyone. If this deal gets delayed, we're not inclined to postpone longer and longer and longer. There could be unintended consequences by including Hines in the moratorium. If the contract with Hines fails to close next year, we will be putting our property back on the market. Instead of a new centerpiece in the town center with extra parking and Whole Foods, you could end up with something else. I don't want that. But after waiting 4 years to sell the property, we just can't be picky anymore. We'd consider an offer from anyone. It's possible you could end up with a payday loan store, another nail salon, e-cigarette store, little strip mall, something that we don't want here on Mercer Island. But we just can't wait forever. We want to sell to Hines. I'm just asking you, please work with them. They're willing to listen to your requests for amenities, and they're willing to listen to the people in Mercer Island. And the village does need some new retail and amenities, that's for sure. As a longtime islander, I understand Mercer Island values. Back in the early 1950s, my mom and Mrs. Peterson across the street drove to Bellevue every Friday to shop at the A&P. Then there was Arts Food Center and eventually Tradewell and Bill Muncie's Thriftway at the south end of the island. So now QFC occupies the old Tradewell store and we have an Albertsons, but when you think about it, not much in the retail has changed. If they still lived here, my mom and Mrs. Peterson would still be driving to Bellevue to shop. The Heinz Project offers a great opportunity for the new town center. Please don't kill the deal. You can make it work. I think a lot of Islanders will appreciate your efforts if the project proceeds and is successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi. My name is Roberta Lewandowski. My address is 4740 86th Avenue Southeast, and I have only been here 37 or 8 years, but so I can't top them. But I have some pretty good stories about how the city has evolved over time. And I do support the moratorium. I am not really against some growth or against more people. I don't know what people mean by density, but having more people and certainly more kids is great. But I think the city does have the right and need to take time to look at, are you getting what you like, and where do we want to go in the future? Even though I don't mind the tall buildings that are here, I'm starting to think, well, what if QFC is that tall? What if Albertson's that tall? Am I going to like the whole thing? And I think taking the time to sort that out and see how you go forward is really important for us. I'm slightly worried that the moratorium is only 4 months, and the process is going on for 6 or 8 months, and I know you probably can extend it at the end of the 4 months, but I think you shouldn't end the moratorium until you've adopted a set of regulations that you think will do the trick. I agree with the comments in the paper. We had an excellent drawing in the paper of a beautiful town center from 1994. They weren't short buildings, they were tall, but they had a lot more character and charm than we're getting, and then most of the cities around here are getting. I mean, really, it's a lot of cities that are looking too much the same, and we have some of the best. We have the best materials that I've seen when I look at all the other cities around here, and a lot of variety. We have more outdoor eating places, which I love. We have more non-chain restaurants. We even have live music at a pizza place, Moe's Pizza, that makes it, we've added a lot of great places on Mercer, and that comes with the people that have come here to the downtown. So I don't want to lose that. I love that we can walk safely. I feel that even with more people on the island, it feels safer to drive in the core, not on Island Crestway, but in the core. You can drive slowly, you can look for the store you want, you can get out, you can walk, you can park under the high-rise building and actually go to 3 stores without feeling guilty about taking up a parking space because it's public parking. Those are all benefits that we've gotten from the new development. But I agree with what I think Peter Orser or Susan Blake said in the paper. We're not getting the charm and graciousness that we wanted. Sometimes the sidewalks are nice, like by Einstein, and you can sit outside. There's more of that than there used to be. I like that. I like that you can walk across the street. When I come out of Einstein's, I'm just thinking about crossing over to QFC. Everybody stops. That didn't happen 30 years ago. It's great. And I remember the planning director, maybe Jane remembers, the planning director 30 years ago proposed pedestrian improvements, and he just about got hooted out of town. It was such a ridiculous idea. And then the business community came forward and said, hey, cars don't buy stuff, people buy stuff. We need people to be able to walk around. And we've got a lot of what we need. So I think you did a great job when you did zoning that allows 2 stories outright and the rest is discretionary, and you've gotten a lot of improvements, good things from that, and I think that it has benefited us. But now I do agree that you should take your time, do this moratorium, and make it last long enough to get the public process work done. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. This is my first meeting. I appreciate you guys having me here. My name is David Bronstetter. I'm at 3742 77th Place Southeast here on the island in Mercerdale. I don't want to beat up the whole legality issue. I'm not a lawyer. I think my 5-year-old brother knows that you guys picking winners or losers probably isn't in the best interest of the city council from a legality perspective. I think we all get that. But at the end of the day, if I set that aside and talk about some of the other issues, Mr. Mayor, thank you for having me here, by the way, but I will take a couple of things that I read that you said, and I wonder why you'd want to postpone the vote on this moratorium. I believe you said that the proposed developer, and I'll call him a proposed developer because my understanding is that they don't even own the property. So the proposed developer said they will give 2 weeks' notice before they would file a permit
to develop the property. So it would only make sense that during this 2-week period you're proposing from now until 2 weeks from now that you would just simply make a decision to include them in the moratorium, because they're going to give you a 2-week notice anyway, so it's a moot point. Additionally, I'd like to address this term I keep hearing, amenities. On Mercer Island, I believe that amenities is one of those things that we now use to try to get the citizens of Mercer Island to accept something that they don't really want. I think that we got amenities for all the other buildings that were down there. What those amenities are, I can't tell. I've also read in blogs and newspapers that we are the vocal minority. Where's the majority? I think that we're the majority. I think that most people don't want this. Mr. Mayor, I think you said it eloquently when you said we all have different visions. I understand that you guys have different visions as residents of Mercer Island, but when you're sitting in those seats, you can't have a vision. We're your constituents. You guys work for us. If we don't want it, then you have to find another way. That's what democracy's all about. It's not your vision of riding a bike. I don't own a bike. You know what? I drive a 2014 Suburban. It's the biggest thing on the road. I like that. It is what it is. I get it, but at the end of the day, you guys work for us. I think at the end of the day, when you have a property owner in Town Center who's saying that they need to be in the moratorium as well and not be excluded, I think that's pretty telling. You know, my family, we walk downtown every weekend, and I can tell you, crossing the street, we take our lives in our hands, and my kids are trained to look 3 times each way before you cross the street. Can imagine what it would be like adding parking spots down there for commuters. Thank you. I appreciate you hearing me out.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. Dave Fennell, 8030 Avalon Place. I've been on the island for 27 years. Before that, I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. I'm really enjoying this because a lot, including the fact that a lot of people here have been on the island for a long period of time. And when I was raised in Washington, D.C. in the 50s, I have very fond memories of that. It was a small little town, kind of a small little southern-tinged culture to it. Guess what? Washington, D.C. has changed a little bit in that long period of time. And you know what? Mercer Island's going to change too over a period of time. I think it's very important for people to have a perspective, a long-range perspective, and also to have a regional perspective, and to have a perspective on many, many things that will affect our quality of life and our children and our children's children. And one of the things that I expect, too, and I need to make this remark as a bit of an aside, I disagree strongly with, I agree with the prior speaker that, quote, the city council works for us, but I also believe in representative government, and we elected you. And actually, we do expect that you'll make decisions on our behalf. And if you don't, then we'll suffer the consequences of tremendous opportunity costs because time goes by and no decisions are made. And so I want the council, I would appreciate if the council would reflect on that as well, because time does cost money. Business people know this, politicians know this, all of us know this in our real life. Time does go on, time is of consequence, it costs. It costs in terms of opportunity, both financial and otherwise. But the thing that I would like to touch on most, too, is that we're part of a larger region, and as everyone knows, because we read it all the time, we are a growing region. And the good news is that it's anticipated that we'll continue to grow. That would be a good thing, because stagnation would not be a good thing, at least certainly not in my opinion. And maybe others disagree with me on that perspective, but I don't. I believe that growth is an aspect of how things improve over time. And we're part of a larger region. And one of the aspects of that growth is the fact that people can travel. Look anywhere in the world, and one of the things that is most significant in terms of quality of living is that people can move about. and they can do so with relative ease and at lowest cost. And this region, the Puget Sound region at large, is finally catching up with that reality. And that reality is going to touch on Mercer Island one way or the other. And we can either be ahead of that reality and decide things on our own behalf and understand that we fit into a larger scheme of things and not be an island completely isolated from that, but participate in it, and do planning that is significant. And I would like to leave it in your hands to do that on our behalf and understand that the moratorium sees it, from my perspective, it seems appropriate you've chosen the right course with the 4-month moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said, folks, don't be shy about lining up a little bit so that we just keep moving here. Welcome.
Evening. I'm Mark Clausen. I live at 6207 Southeast 32nd Street. I know that you all are considering the findings of fact on the moratorium, and I honestly haven't had a chance to get through all those findings, so I don't have comments on that. Maybe some general principles to guide you going forward through the moratorium process. The first thing that, I have been kind of on the sidelines just observing a lot of what's been going on, and I think that when you see the number of people here, that has to tell you that maybe you guys don't have the credibility that you think you do about coming up with a good decision. And so my first point is to suggest that maybe you guys ought to give up a little bit of the control of the process of determining how our town center should look. You guys make the final decision anyway. So I might suggest that having 40 people on a committee to come up with suggestions, and having council members on the committee, and the planning commission on the committee, and the design commission on the committee, that's not really going to be productive. Because I'll tell you what that looks like from the sidelines. It looks like window dressing. It looks like you guys are coming up with a big, unmanageable group with yourselves inserted into the process just so that you can control the outcome. I'd like to suggest that you have a much smaller group, that you guys are not involved in the process, and you let that group come up with recommendations and see whether those recommendations make sense to you. The second thing is, and I don't know of a nice way to say this, but the development that we have in the town center so far has too much schlock. There should not be naked concrete at the sidewalk level of any development. We should have buildings that are nicer than that. I'm not opposed to density. You look at some of the great places in cities in the world. You look at Robson Street in Vancouver. You look at the Champs-Élysées in Paris. You look at even the Pike Place Market in Seattle. It's not from a lack of density that people want to be there. In fact, density is part of what makes it exciting and fun. It's the fact that those places manage to have things on a human scale. And I think if you guys can turn over some control of determining what that human scale is, that you'll ultimately end up with a better result. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you. David Whitman, 6114 92nd Avenue, Southeast. I don't envy you guys, and the decision you have to make. It's amazing listening to this group, and then I talked to other groups. Apparently, we have two distinct majorities in the island, with each one claiming that they're right, and each one claiming that they've got the answer, if you'll just listen to me. You guys have tough jobs. That being said, I would ask you to look at the idea that time is money, and that an opportunity once passed is an opportunity that may not come again. I think a lot of people on the moratorium side are well-intentioned, and I understand what they're coming at, but are they really asking for a moratorium, or are they asking for a different development than the one is proposed? I don't think that, and when you look at the economics of it, I'm not sure that the other developments make sense. That another idea of a two-story development, the numbers won't pencil out. The numbers are hard. So this idea that we're going to have a moratorium to decide what to do with Hines, I think it's kind of illusion. That they don't like the building as it's proposed. But I would also submit that this idea that time is money and that things are going to happen, we need to do something. We need to have some progress. I think Hines has really demonstrated the fact that they're willing to work with the city, they're willing to work with the people to come up with something that really meets the city's needs. I think they've shown that they've shown that willingness to work. I'm just scared that we're going to have this moratorium, and then it's going to be 6 months. We've already heard people advocate for, take all the time you need, 6 months, 18 months. I'm afraid that 18 months is going to turn into 24 months, 36 months, and then we're going to be left with the exact same city center we have now. I don't think that's really what we want. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Nancy Hewitt Spaeth. I live at 8320 Southeast 34th Street. And I have two basic things I want to say. Part of it is what would be discussed during the moratorium as far as what density looks like in our town center or our village. If we get lots of tall buildings, it will become cold. And I heard this discussed this evening. You go to downtown Seattle, you're cold. All of the sidewalks are in the shade. That's what happens when you take away the sun. And the lovely lady who spoke earlier about wanting to sell her property continued through her whole conversation to refer to town center as a village. You take away our sun, you take away the feeling of a gracious place, and we will no longer have a village. The other thing I wanted to say is I spoke with several people at the open house Thursday evening that worked with Hines. One of the gentlemen said to me, we're only going for 4 stories. But then I forgot to ask him, is that 4 stories on top of retail, which becomes 5? Or is it just 4? Another gentleman I spoke with from Hines said, well, what if we do a setback at 4 and a setback at 5 and have 6? So now I'm not sure I trust them anymore. Are they telling me the truth? Are they telling us the truth? I'm just a little bit worried about that. So I really don't, as Tom said, want to take away the sun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Surely there's someone else. Welcome, Evan.
Hi, my name's Evan Casaguma. I'm with Hines. And just so there aren't any, there's no misinformation, we are not planning on 6 stories. Throughout the process, we've promised to work in good faith with the city to create a project that enhances and improves the town center. We remain fully committed to this process and fully committed to working with the city. So in this spirit, we had a public open house last Thursday to gather information, gather input, and hear from residents. What we heard loud and clear was that the public wants real benefits. Useful, public open plazas that draws in the community and serves as true focal points for the town center. High-quality retail that enhances the town center experience. Now, I think some may have expected to see completed designs, but we were focused on listening first and designing second, and I think it would have been a little presumptuous of us to come in with a design and propose that. We wanted to listen so that could impact our design and help shape what we're planning to do. We also paused our design process to get so that we can do this and we can gather the inputs and hopefully create a better project. So I just want to talk briefly about what we heard and what we're planning to do with that information. Regarding the public plaza, it's very clear. It can't be cut off. It can't feel private. The city, the residents demand wide, broad, open spaces, not little caves or areas that aren't useful. There's a lot of enthusiasm for green spaces, less hardscape. So what we're proposing to do is create an open plaza along the length of Southeast 29th. And when I say open, it will be completely open. There's no cutout. It will be from curb to building, about 40 feet at a minimum. It'll be south-facing, so there'll be a lot of sunlight, and it'll pull the building back from the street to create the type of environment that I think people are expecting and that they want. Regarding retail, I was speaking last week with one of the most, in my opinion, respected island retailers, and what he told me was that local small retail spaces would be excellent, but he also admitted that to support this, the town center needs two things. It needs people, shoppers, and it needs an anchor retailer. So as you know, we're continuing to try to bring an anchor retailer into the town center. We continue to negotiate with Whole Foods, and we're committed to bringing a high-quality retailer that not only anchors the town center, but also helps engage our public space so that it's not some space that is not used, but it's something that brings people in and people can enjoy. And finally, regarding bulk and mass, we clearly understand that there's a need for modulation and articulation to break up the building facades. We also need high-quality materials on the pedestrian plane. Our architect is working diligently right now and spending a lot of time to solve this, and we're excited to work through that process and create something that does break up the bulk and mass. Thank you.
Thank you. Ira.
Ira Appleman, 4436 Ferncroft Road. As we've been told many times, we're not here to talk about the Heinz project. We're here to talk about the town center and how it should move in the future. And any commitments that the developer makes are irrelevant here because they can ignore them later unless they're written down in law. I support the moratorium, but not the King Heinz exemption. No justification. I don't want to talk about the findings of fact, since that's what we're here to talk about, but no justification is given in the findings of fact for the King Heinz exemption. Just reading E in the exemptions, it says that exempting the Heinz project from the moratorium was appropriate for the reasons enumerated by the council in its decision to implement the moratorium on February 2nd, 2015. So you can't even come up with the reasons. You have to say that maybe there were some reasons given, and the only reason that I can remember is that you might be sued by them, and as the city attorney said, it didn't even matter if we won the suit because we'd lose money and we wouldn't be able to recover. But you can't discriminate in favor of the wealthy, and just because these developers, the Kings and Heinz, are wealthy, that doesn't mean that you can discriminate in their favor. I think the problem started in 1994, at least as you know. I'm very much into the history of Mercer Island, and with the Hollywood video development, and one of the Hollywood video developers was here last time. He's a part of this process, one of his properties, and after people did not like the Hollywood video development, and so what he wrote to his friend at Hollywood Video was, as you recall, this is 1994, as you recall, the new freestanding Mercer Island store was built under exciting new city regulations and with extraordinary high level of cooperation from the city staff and the citizen boards. We're talking about the Design Commission. And I think that's where the problem started, that suddenly Mercer Island, as he points out, used to be considered a restrictive community, but we haven't been a restrictive community more recently. So these wealthy people, they're used to getting their way throughout the region. They're used to controlling councils, and whenever somebody objects to their massive developments, which is all about money, it's not about anything else, they say, we're afraid of change. I'm not afraid of change. In this case, let's have some real change. Let's have the council represent the people of Mercer Island rather than the wealthy who are simply trying to make money off a process.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Cynthia Winiski, 2750 68th Ave Southeast. First, I'd like to call your attention to a basic primer entitled The Moratoria Handbook for Municipalities that advises city attorneys that exemptions to moratoria, quote, invite equal protection challenges. Second, on February 19th, 10 days ago, I emailed these findings of fact to the clerk, the staff, and the city council. These findings of fact are comprised of 711 pages with 77 details of findings and exhibits that support those findings. I asked then for these findings of facts to be added to the packet for tonight's meeting, but it wasn't. So I'm requesting again that these findings of facts be entered into and made part of the official public record for this evening's public hearing, which is mandated by RCW 3670A390 and RCW 35A 63220. Here is a hard copy and electronic copy of those findings and facts. Please enter both of these copies into the official public record for this evening's public hearing. The last thing I have to say is the city's findings, preliminary findings, included a letter given to the city from Hines that said that they would work with us and give us that 15 days notice. I have to say that at the end of last meeting, Deputy Mayor Grouse stated that he solicited that letter. He actively solicited the letter. So not only did he solicit that letter, in my mind that begs the question, did he provide any input to that letter? Also, it's just something I have to think about. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up. Welcome.
Thanks. My name's Matt Winiski. I live at 2750 68th Avenue Southeast. Over the past few days, I've had the opportunity to read a transcript of the January 23rd, 2015 City Council Planning Session and a transcript of the February 2nd, 2015 City Council meeting. The first thing that grabbed me was that Deputy Mayor Grouse's presentation at the January 23rd planning session regarding, 1, the vested rights bright line that a project does not vest until a developer has filed a, and I'm quoting here, complete building permit application. And 2, that a moratorium must apply, and again I'm quoting here, must apply to the whole area that is under review. It's the entire town center. But at the February 2nd City Council meeting, 1, vested rights were essentially ignored, and 2, the requirement that a moratorium must apply to the entire town center simply disappeared and was replaced with an exemption of the Hines project. The second thing that grabbed me was that any litigation risk arose from meetings and discussions between the city and Hines, not from any moratorium. It appeared that the public was being misdirected to moratoria to fulfill someone's hidden agenda. So I filed a public records request earlier today for the public records of those meetings and discussions between the city and Hines. While the information regarding those meetings and discussions will be revealed by the requested public records, I request that the City Council disclose the facts and circumstances of those meetings and discussions at this evening's City Council meeting. That public disclosure tonight would engender the public's trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Joy.
Okay, Joy Matsuura, 7264 West Mercer Way. I wasn't going to speak, but events tonight just kind of made me feel like I should say something. Sitting in the audience, I wanted to comment that it was actually appalling to start out this session by hearing that the city was not prepared. There are a lot of people that took the time to come here tonight, and I understand that you had to get outside counsel and that they had a public emergency, but I mean a private emergency, but that doesn't to me negate the city's responsibility to be prepared for this. That we push it back 2 weeks. I guess we can live with that. Hopefully, people will still be able to watch or maybe attend, but I'm not sure. The other thing is that I'm also concerned about the process that will take place after you get your legal advice. Haven't had time to attend a lot of the meetings lately, but it sounds like you're going to go into closed session, and that too raises questions for me about transparency in government, and people want to actually know about the process. I understand you don't want to get sued, but the public does need to understand what you are doing in your deliberations and the thinking, and you need to find a way to communicate that in reliable information, and the best way is for people to be able to hear what is said. And I guess that's all I'm going to say. I'm not an attorney, but there are a lot of attorneys sitting amongst the citizenry here, and I'd be interested in seeing how much they think about, this process that they heard about, and, how much they agree with the decisions that you're making with regard to that process. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Uncle Robert.
Good evening. Bob Medved, 7238 Southeast 32nd Street. I was going to go through the memorandum that you have, January 21, February 1, February 1, which treats 1, moratorium, how safe they are, 2, why there's no risk, and 3, what vested rights are about. However, I would like to deal with this first. As one gentleman said, you work for us. Okay, that's in the Constitution, wherever. But your guiding principle is the law. It's not where a building's nice or not nice or what have you, and I've got nothing for or against Hines. But the law is the law. And what we heard tonight about if we waive this or do that, that is a wrong statement of law. You can selectively waive anything as long as you make it clear. So let's say outside counsel opines on 30 issues, you can selectively waive one of those. And it also begs the question, if the council says you can do this, why would you not want to tell the citizens that it's legal? It seems to me only if council says it's illegal and you go and do it, you'd not want to do it, you hide that. For example, if you get an opinion that it's lawful to ignore the well-established body of law of vested rights, like I think you did on the second, if he gives you that opinion, people should know about it. Oh, vested rights doesn't apply here for whatever reason. I don't think you'll get that opinion. If he gives you an opinion that a moratorium that uniformly applies to his whole zone is more risk than one that applies to the zone but exempts one person, if he gives you that opinion, why don't you share that? Cynthia read a quote of kind of a basic primer for city attorneys. You invite equal protection claims. So the fact that, you can't waive this or do that or whatever, not quite true. Second, I'm bothered by the fact that how lightly you take the requirement of a public hearing and findings of fact. This is not a city council meeting. It's a public hearing required by a state statute. And it has constitutional underpinnings. I won't bore you with that. At these hearings, you've got to take evidence, and your findings of fact have got to be based upon evidence, not what you selectively think would be nice or this or that. You need a fact. So the hearing's got to be that way, and the findings of fact, like the ones that Cynthia did, are supported by documents. Those set of findings of fact, if you're worried about litigation, will bulletproof this city from litigation regarding moratoria, because they are complete, they're supported, and it all supports the fact that it is arguably unlawful, I'll let your attorney tell you that, to exempt anybody. This is not a Hines issue, it's anybody. How do you sit there and say, well, let's put Heinz back in, and we'll let McDonald's out.
I have to ask you to wrap up.
Thank you very much, and I would just try to draw this back to really the guiding principle is the law. No one's above the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Welcome.
Good evening. I'm John Houlihan, Houlihan Law. My address is 3401 Evanston Avenue North in Seattle, Washington. I represent Dollar Development and James and Doris Kassan. First and foremost, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. Previously, I sent a letter along with some renderings of Dollar's proposed hotel project on Sunset Highway, where the old Travel Lodge used to be. In the interest of time, I just want to say that we have a simple request, and that is we believe that our development stands in the same place as Heinz does. We've worked with the city and prepared and presented preliminary drawings, received input from city staff, and made revisions to those drawings based upon those comments. We are moving forward to prepare an application to build a hotel on Mercer Island, something that hasn't been done in decades. It serves an important need that, from our research, is supported by people on the island, a place to have residents stay when perhaps they're remodeling their house, have family members visiting, an opportunity to stay there, and also bring people who would otherwise stay in Bellevue or Seattle to Mercer Island and enjoy the amenities of this town. The moratorium exempts Heinz's project. We believe, as I said, that our project should be within that exemption if you're going to provide one for that particular property and project. Ours should be treated in the same way. That would be fair and equitable. With respect to the public amenities that people have been searching for, Dollar Development has in fact worked with the city for years, providing those exact type of public amenities in the developments that it has brought to the market. This hotel project would be no different. We've already looked at how do we link this project through the Mercer to create that and complete that pedestrian paseo that will break up what is right now a very large mega block. We've looked at and have redone the design to include enhanced public space within the hotel development. It also isn't, it is like the Heinz project in the sense of our interaction and reliance on comments from the city and expenditure of funds to move our project forward. But it's also different in that it is a hotel. It is for transient visitors to the town center and to the island. And so it doesn't have the commensurate impact on transportation or schools. It's also located on the edge of the town center, so it's located close to existing public transit, the bus terminal, and it will be located adjacent to the forthcoming light rail. We would ask that if you consider an exemption, as you go through and evaluate the ordinance through the public hearing process, that we be included within the exemption. Appreciate the time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, with that I will, guys, come on. You don't be so shy. I need you to line up so that you can speak if you're going to speak, okay? Come on up. Sir. Sir, come on up. Sir, you. Go. Thank you. You're on.
I'll make it fairly brief. I wanted
introduce yourself. And
Ben Humphrey, 8009 Southeast 58th Street, Mercer Island. While people have made the point that you're working for us, I wanted to make the point that we're not all here in one block with one opinion. I certainly would like to see a Whole Foods on Mercer Island. I would love to see the downtown area grow in that. I would love to see some new businesses that would make it less likely that I have to leave the island. Certainly, other than groceries, there's, and maybe a couple of food places. I find that there's relatively little to go there for right now. I certainly don't want giant high-rises. I don't think anybody does. I don't want a giant Hollywood video that's 5 stories high. I'm certainly sensitive to that, but that said, I don't want to lock the town down into what it looks like now. I think it really could use some new businesses, some new places to go for island residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, you're up.
Alrighty, thank you. I was inspired. Curtis Brown, 7015 80th Avenue Southeast. Gross. We're being overrun. There are no 2 majorities, okay? We've come here to raise our families, pay our mortgage and our taxes, and we want a suburban neighborhood to do that in. And we would like you to vote along those lines and support us to that degree. Save Our Suburbs is gaining traction. People are signing up on that website daily. They're doing that for a reason. All of this that we're talking about here has to do with the Growth Management Act, and let's start hearing those words in our conversations. We need to become experts on that Growth Management Act. We need to know the players that are involved with it, not only here at the island level, but at the state level, at the county level. We need to start making ourselves gracious to them. We need to include ourselves in those conversations. We need to start pushing, not just regarding this moratorium, which we need, and we need it to apply to everyone, but we need to start looking beyond that for the next round, because it's coming, and it's coming soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michelle.
Hi, Michelle Goldberg, 2212 78th Avenue. I wanted to go on record as saying that the moratorium should never have exempted the Hines project. I think the only reason we were discussing Hines specifically was because one of the proposed moratoria had it written that way. So it was never about Hines. The moratorium was always about a tool to put the town center development on hold while the city revised the comprehensive plan, revised its development codes, and continued with the town center visioning process. I was going to say that Hines just had the misfortune of being the only developer in the pipeline while the city was discussing the moratorium, but apparently after hearing the attorney for the Kassan property and Mr. Cohen, apparently there are several properties that are in the pipeline. So we need to go back, and I just want to say this, please do not grant 3 more or 2 more exemptions. I mean, the whole point is to stop the construction so we can look at what's happening in our town center and see whether we're building so many residential units that our schools cannot take the density, they cannot take the enrollment. Even with the construction of the new 4th elementary school, when that school opens, all of the schools will be at capacity. And it's my understanding that the schools, that those enrollment figures do not even take into account those students that will be living at the Legacy project or at the Hines proposed project. So where are we going to put those students? And if we don't have impact fees that are sufficient to negate the impact to the schools, I know who's going to be paying for it. It's going to be the citizens. I support the bonds. I'm an ardent supporter of the education, and I think that the schools are one of the greatest things about our community. That's why most of us, if you ask people why they moved here, it was for the schools. And I support the bonds. But at some point, I'm not going to write a blank check. If you walk into this mess with your eyes open, knowing that we can't take the enrollment, and that we're going to have to increase the taxes, it's going to cause a cascade of events. People who right now are empty nesters, or they are on fixed incomes, they're going to leave. And when they leave, they're going to sell to families with students. And then where are those students going to go? So it's just a domino effect. Please think about this. Please grant the moratorium, take Hines' exemption out. You need to really think about how all the pieces fit together. We need to put it on pause and really consider how the town is going to grow and how it's going to affect all of the infrastructures. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave?
Okay, I wasn't going to say anything, but I am. So first of all, you're actually giving up your time, and I thank you for the time you're giving. You're citizens, we're not paying you for this, and you are citizens like us, and I respect all the work you guys put in. So I think we should all actually recognise that these guys work very hard, and that's an important thing that we should inject into the conversation. I'd like to make a couple of points, and I'll be very quick. I'm just reading this document which I down printed yesterday when I talked to Bruce about, how do I get my voice in this, because the Planning Commission's a waste of time. Because there's no communication between the Planning Commission and the Council, because our legal department says we can't have any, so I don't feel like our legal department knows what democracy is, but that's a whole separate topic. We won't go there. We live in the age of the Internet. There's a bunch of people here tonight, but there are 7,000 homes on this island. There are 23,000 people here. Now go read your statistics. 92% of our citizens have an internet connection. And we're using kind of a 1970s, let's have 40 people in a group cluster. It's nice. Extend your moratorium, but change your engagement. Use SurveyMonkey. Everybody's got an email address. Dan emails 2,000 people on a regular basis. I don't always read it on time, Dan, and I know you shout at me for that. But the reality is, why can't we have a digital survey? And before you run down the path with this theory of there are two majorities, it wouldn't be hard, after we do the engagement of citizens, after you extend your moratorium with no exceptions to people with favourites, and then go to your citizenry and get a real meeting over your digital communication, engage with the citizens digitally. It's very easy, right? You could do that, and you could probably get 60% participation out of 7,000 homes, and you could have a real sense of what the majority is, as opposed to each group alleging what the majority is. Go for a digital feedback, please.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'm going to close this if I don't. Robert? Okay.
Bat and clean up, Mr. Mayor.
You are bat and clean up.
Want to get 2 minutes? Go. Robert Thorpe, 2737 Southeast 78th Street, R.W. Thorpe Associates, planners, urban designers, and economists. I'm here to speak on two issues. One that isn't up tonight about downzoning single family. Don't do it. B, moratoriums. They don't really work. They're a short-term stopgap, but they don't really work. They just push the problem off to the side. On downzoning single-family areas, you have lots of regulations, many of which I worked when I was on the staff here. The tree ordinance, that. Colville showed us we can control what happens in single-family areas. So that's not a good idea, but moratoriums only push it off. The other thing I think about is the downtown area. For all of you who live in single-family area, every time there's development in the downtown area and there's a tax base, that helps to keep your taxes low. We have a fixed mill rate. So you build in the downtown. The Growth Management Act says we have to take so much population. I know there's a debate about that, but I came here in 1968, worked on the Harstead Plan. In 1970 to 75 with staff, we developed the National Endowment of Art for the plan, led by Bruce Lorig. It said, that's due downtown. Nothing was happening. Lightfoot owned this, and nobody worked together. But you couldn't build any more than 2 stories because there were no incentives. So we did that plan. We developed the first design commission in the state, a protection against the things you want in your downtown area. Let's have streets. We did the Starbucks. Is it a nice place to go? We've got lots of projects like that around there. We've done them all over the country and all over the state. And I think there's the design commission is a thing. I think we looked at this in 96. I was on the staff in 94. We said, let's do that. I mean, Peter Oser, Bruce Lorig, some of you were on this board. We said, let's do this. So we've been doing a downtown area. What happens is you're not going to have development if it's 2 stories. You're not going to get affordable housing. You're not going to get plazas if you restrict it to 2 stories. So this idea to stop the train really doesn't work. The Growth Management Act says we have to take our fair share. Look what's happening in Juanita. That's what could happen here. DuPont was a plain thing. We did the master plan there. We did Snoqualmie Ridge. If you have a clean palette, you can do that, both the infill. I think some projects like the Hines project and others and the legacies work. There's a gentleman sitting outside for ARC. If you say no more, nothing's 2 stories, forget about affordable housing. If you want people in the downtown area to walk to your shops and that, who is successful? Look at the guy at the Blazer. He's successful because he's a good entrepreneur. New on the island. He's reaching out. He's doing stuff. Good businessmen can do that. I'm a member of the chamber, and I believe that if you continue allowing good development, require the things for open space, for parking, there's opportunities to do affordable housing. There's a thing in your code right now that says if somebody wants to build a 2,000 square foot pizza thing, they got to do 24 public stalls. What's wrong with that part of the code? Bad part of the code. So I'm saying, in closing, I think that moratoriums don't necessarily work. You've got a lot of things in regulation. And finally, Hines is, if it's vested, it's vested. I'm an expert on growth management, and I have some of the best case law in the state on vesting. The Buren versus Wensmark versus Buren, and another case that's going on now. If they're vested, they're going to be able to go ahead. If they aren't, they can't go ahead. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you all for your comments, and thank you for your politeness as an audience to this. It's a large crowd, and I think everyone handled themselves well, so thank you for that. Let's take a minute. It will take until, let's take 10. We'll go to 8:45 and then reconvene.
Are we back on?
We're going to reconvene here, folks. If I could ask you to sit down. Thank you. Oh, I'm back on the microphone. Sorry. Don't have to yell.
Okay, wait.
So, Karin, if we're on? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I just have you clarify for the record that the public...
We're reconvening the meeting now, and now, Katie, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that for the purposes of the record that you clarify that the public hearing will be...
Could I ask somebody to close the door, please? Yeah.
We'll clarify for the record that the public hearing will be continued to March 16th.
So, for the record, the public hearing will be continued until March 16th.
Thank you.
All right. Now, council members, with that, my intent is to leave this agenda bill and move on to the rest of our agenda for this evening. Okay with that? I'm back to the thumbs up, thumbs down on this at this point. Yes.
There were a number of interesting points that were made tonight that do not relate specifically to the moratorium and the discussion on the moratorium. They were what I would consider adjunct issues. At what point do we raise those either tonight or then to city staff and email? How do we go forward with that? No, for example, it's questions regarding approaching GMA, school board and mitigation fees. There's a whole raft of, I think, important components that are not immediately pertinent to the moratorium, but swirl around the issue.
Yep, perhaps maybe we could connect and I could get that list from you and then we can talk, because some of those like impact fees and mitigation fees are built into some of the work that's coming up. But if there's some things there that you noted that aren't built into the work yet, we can talk and I can work with Katie and we'll get them in.
Great.
Okay, Jane?
Yeah, I'd like to just agree with Debbie on that. I think we need a study session or on the GMA in the next couple of months, if possible. My suggestion.
Okay. Other, Mike?
Two things. First of all, before I forget, one lady with the 723 statement of facts. What's that? Cynthia, right. She referenced that packet gets included in the record. Is that right?
Everyone's testimony is part of the record, and whether it's written or spoken, it's included as part of the public record on this legislative hearing, yes.
Okay. So I was I'm very proud of our community, the decorum they have in presenting a very sensitive and important subject. So it's what makes it wonderful being up here on this dais in this community. It's in the best short-term, medium-term, and long-term interest of the island to amend the moratorium that does not exempt the development located between 77th Avenue Southeast, 78th Avenue Southeast, Southeast 29th Street, and Town Center.
I apologize for this, but because with the hearing process, there's going to be additional testimony taken in, and then this sort of conversation and discussion can take place. I think that's what's problematic. We're still going to be taking in additional public testimony, and the time for the discussion and what you want to do with it at that point should happen on the 16th.
You think it's more appropriate not to do it now?
Correct. I do think it's more appropriate not to do it now. I will bring the ordinances I discussed. I'll bring one that removes the exemption, so you know that you have that vehicle. That's the point in time. But the first piece has to be to take all the public testimony, that we get some of these legal questions that have been raised for you answered. We'll do that all, and then to do this portion of it. But I think you've got the cart ahead of the horse, and you know I don't like that.
Okay, Madam City Attorney.
Thanks, Mike, for holding off. Okay, anyone else? All right, with that, do I need to do anything formal in terms of moving on to the next agenda bill beyond what we've already done? We've continued.
No, you've already said we're going to continue the public hearing.
Very good. We move now to Agenda Bill 5045, Revision to Shoreline Master Program Update, second reading. Scott.
Thank you. Scott Greenberg, your Development Services Group Director. Depending on what you do with this agenda bill tonight, this could be the end of 8 years of work on the Shoreline Master Program. I know that you have a lot on your plate and would want to work on this some more, but the ordinance before you tonight, the ordinance before you tonight, along with Ordinance 13C-12 that you passed in December of 2013, comprise the city's updated Shoreline Master Program. Those two ordinances include everything that the council formally requested from the Department of Ecology. Ecology has agreed to those changes and sent them back to you as recommended or required changes. That's just how they do their process. Draft Ordinance 15C-02, Exhibit 2 of your agenda bill, contains 3 additional things meant for either clarification or correction purposes. One is we added another whereas statement just to recognize that the Department of Ecology did conditionally approve the Shoreline Master Program on February 6th, so we just added that as a fact. Then there are 2 other things that were added. One fairly minor is definition of wetland manual. The language, I don't know what happened. Something just got deleted, I guess, by mistake. The language read identification and lineation of their boundaries. It should read identification of wetlands and delineation of their boundaries. So I think that's what the intent was. At least that's the language Ecology had us proposing way back when. So I've checked that and added that into the ordinance. And then the third one is more of a technical correction on the definition of ordinary high water mark. Without getting into too much detail, there's several different survey datum that can be used. There is a relationship between the different datum, but the more common datum that's used is NAVD 88, which was done in 1988, and that equates to 18.6 feet above sea level is where the ordinary high water mark is located on the shoreline of Lake Washington. That's the number that staff has been using for many years, and in an attempt to try to recalibrate that to a datum at the locks, the number basically just got messed up. So the number that was in the SMP that you had sent forward to Ecology for ordinary high water mark wasn't even anywhere close to the 18.6 when it was converted to that datum. So what we've done is we've worked with Ecology on this. They had seen this in several other cities, and the proposed datum of 18.6 is now consistent with other Lake Washington cities. So, and again, it's exactly what we've been using. So with those 3 changes, staff is recommending that you adopt Ordinance 15C-02.
I would entertain a motion.
I would move to adopt ordinance number 15C-02, amending Mercer Island Civil Code 19.07.110, Mercer Island Shoreline Master Program.
Second. All right, moved and seconded. Discussion.
I have a question, please.
I'm sorry, I should have given you that
That's all right.
opportunity
No
first.
worries.
Go ahead.
No worries. So that 18.6, I had that one lot with the ordinary high water mark. Was that lots, that's apostrophe S, ordinary high water mark according to this 18.6?
Trying to remember the exact case there, but I guess what I can tell you is that when those plans were reviewed by staff, the 18.6 was the mark that was used. I think there were some other issues there too, but that was the mark that was used, 18.6.
If that's not the case, let me know, please.
Okay.
And then I have a question on Exhibit 2, page 8, PDF page 91. And I just want clarification on this. This is when we limit one facility per lot.
Okay.
One dock, one facility, yeah. And I want to understand the intent of that. So some folks have talked to me that there might be a neighbor, or there are neighbors' docks that may straddle a property line, which potentially from this could be interpreted that that dock is both on property A and property B, for instance. So the intent of this is that in instances where a dock may straddle a property line, that one dock goes to one person's lot, and that frees up, or it still enables the other person to build a lot, to build a dock. Meaning, I guess maybe another way of saying it is the intent is that if a dock encroaches upon or straddles a property line, the intent is that two properties, two docks.
I would say I believe that's the intent, yeah. If you have 500 waterfront lots, I think the intent would be that there could be up to 500 docks. Because some people will have shared docks, and there might be some other circumstances there.
Okay.
Any other questions first? Okay. Seeing none, other discussion or comments? Jane?
Do most cities take 8 years to redo their SMP? Is this unusual, or are we taking? Do we take our time?
I don't know if it's really unusual. I think I was involved before with the city, and we did ours in like 5 years, I think. But there were some contentious issues that then went to the Growth Management Hearings Board, so it took them a little bit longer. But cities like Bellevue, they're a little bit behind where we are, I think, in their process. I don't know when they started. And I think a lot of it has to do with how old the SMP was that was being updated. Some cities, a handful probably, updated their SMPs maybe 5 or 10, 15 years ago, so there was less of a delta between their original SMP like we had and new thoughts about environmental protection and shoreline protection that came out in the early 2000s.
Thank you. I'm glad it's done.
Me too.
Debbie?
When is the next update due? Should we start now?
It's every 7 years.
If it's every 7 years, we're a year late in starting our revisions.
We'll come back to you in your next budget process.
Okay.
Actually, I was talking with somebody about that on staff earlier today. I think the next update, 7, 8 years from now, will be less painful and a little bit less difficult because, again, you're starting with sort of a more contemporary SMP to begin with. And then you only have to go back and incorporate changes in the Shoreline Management Act and rules since this SMP was adopted.
Well, that's a good lead-in for what I want to say on I kind of disagree with you. The SMP is a constant ratcheting of regulations, and I'll not support this. I haven't, for that reason, because my colleagues in the Bellevue community, if DOE or COE gets a unanimous thumbs up from the Mercer Island SMP, that means quite a bit. That's a unanimous, especially since our SMP is more restrictive. I think that was the swan call of now Representative Sen, making it more restrictive on our citizens than it needs to be. And what I anticipate, Scott, is that the next time it will be just as laborious to update because DOE will take the level that they have, that they've attained in restrictions, and just ratchet up some more with no basis of scientific causation of improving the environment, but just to do it. And we've gone round and round over the last 8 years, and we've had experts testify to that fact. Now, there are two sides to every story, of course, but that will be the basis of my not voting for this, if for no other reason, just so DOE can't use the mantra that, well, got a unanimous support from Mercer Island, so Bellevue and the other cities that are going through this process won't be hamstrung with the precedent that we set.
Okay. Anyone else? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Scott, thank you very much for 8 years' worth of work. Particularly, thanks on trying to get us, our creativity in getting us through the last steps of this. There was some real conundrums we got stuck on at the end there with dock width, and I think staff working with DOE managed to come up with some creative solutions, and thank you very much for...
And I'd also just like to acknowledge the work of Travis Saunders, our senior planner. He couldn't be here tonight, but he's the one that started with this process 8 years ago. So he's lived, every change and every draft and almost every meeting on it. So he did a great job.
Pass our thanks to him.
I will. Thank you.
All right, we move to Agenda Bill 5042, East Link Light Rail Station Name Recommendation. Kirsten Taylor.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. For the record, Kirsten Taylor, your Assistant City Manager. Sound Transit is preparing to finalize permanent station names for all Eastlink Extension light rail stations, and they have asked the City of Mercer Island to submit a name recommendation for the station located in Mercer Island. The light rail station names must fit a set of criteria. Reflecting the nature of the environment, they have to be brief and easy to read and remember, comply with Federal Americans with Disabilities Act guidelines and requirements, and be limited to 30 characters, and avoid similar names or words in existing facility names. Sound Transit has collected feedback on station naming at multiple venues, at open houses, at summer celebration, any of the public outreach opportunities over the last year and a half. They got about 100 recommendations. 80% of them said, keep it simple, Mercer Island. There were some other ideas. We kind of liked the idea of maybe a Mercer Island whistle stop, but I think Mercer Island is what the community seems to believe should be recommended. I would like to point out, I had a question after the agenda packet went out about whether we would be naming it the Mercer Island Station. And actually, Sound Transit adds station to all their names, so I would recommend that we change Exhibit 1 on page 3, where the second paragraph, the Mercer Island City Council recommends Mercer Island Station, to just Mercer Island as the name of the station on Mercer Island.
Although Mercer Island Station, that...
I know, it does have kind of a ring to it.
Noticed.
Yes, yes. Yes.
Benson.
I was just curious what the ADA requirements were, or the guidelines, as far as the name.
Well, we have somebody from Sound Transit here who could perhaps answer that question about what particular ADA requirements are.
Or could perhaps feel completely thrown to the crocodiles, too.
Tia Ramat from Sound Transit.
Hi. With relationship to what the station name is, it needs to be 30 characters or less, including the spaces, in whatever precedes the word station.
And that's an ADA?
It's an ADA requirement, yes. And then there are several other requirements about font and the way the signs are built, if you will. But the one that's salient to the decision you're making tonight is really the 30 characters or less.
Why is that ADA? Why is that an ADA requirement?
I didn't write. Go ahead.
It's got to be signed.
I think it's a site thing. I'm not sure.
That's probably how many characters you can...
How quickly you can take it in and read it.
All right, other questions? Jane?
Because I'm interested in history, I am so curious about some of the other names that were submitted. I understand Roanoke Crossing, Mercer Village, Mercer View, Luther Burbank, but Beaumont, I don't know where that came from. Anyway, if anyone knows. I'd be curious to find out. All the others make a lot of sense, but not Beaumont.
That's probably their name.
It's going to be followed directly by a suggestion to change Mercer Island to Beaumont.
Yeah, and that guy will know where to get off.
Anyone else? Other questions? All right, I'm looking for a motion then.
All right, I move to recommend the name Mercer Island. Do I have to amend the? I have to amend
No,
that.
you just made the motion. So
Just make the motion. You don't have to
I'm
amend it.
okay. Recommend the name Mercer Island to the Sound Transit Board for the East Link Light Rail Station located in the city of Mercer Island.
Second.
discussion.
Well, when I was a kid, we got a Dalmatian, and I said, Mom, I know what we can call it. We can call it Spot. This is I'm having a deja vu here. Of course, we have a station to name. We're going to name it Mercer Island Station.
Yeah, Mike, I assume you're going to vote against this, though, because you don't want Sound Transit to think we're all in favor.
Right.
Sorry, I poke fun.
No, that's all right.
All right, any other discussion? Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We move to other business. Councilmember absences, we have none. Thank you all for relieving me of my absence, or excusing me from my absence last week.
It was a close vote.
Planning schedule. No.
Okay, thank you. So with the moratorium, the continuation of the hearing, and then your determination on the findings of fact and other things, moved to March 16th. I wanted to just check in with you all. We also have an executive session that night. Actually, we're going to have two separate executive sessions. One, so I won't say exactly what they're about, but we need to add an executive session in addition to the one that's already on the schedule. So is there any appetite or agreement to start one of those executive sessions maybe at 5:15 in order to fit that all in that evening?
Is it?
Alternatively, what I might do would be to go ahead and start it at 6 and then do the impact fees, just still a little bit more of a study session type of format, because it's more presentation and question and answer, but maybe move that to regular business. But I don't want to move all the executive session to the very end. One of those we have to have at the beginning, actually. So,
Can any of those items be moved, delayed?
Yeah, I think I'm already going to move the open space 10-year plan update. Can be moved, so that's going to get moved.
Solicitor's order.
The solicitor's ordinance, Katie, what's our time restriction on that?
We actually do need to get that on there so that we can reflect to the court that we've done the amendment that he ordered.
Yeah, we've got the federal court order that we're dealing with. So, so anyway, if you all want to check your calendars and maybe let me know in the next day or two if that would work for you, and then I'll work from there to land a time that works for everyone.
I could check with opposing counsel on that. Sorry, I could check with opposing counsel on that to see if they would be amenable, but I would rather get it done. I think it'll be actually a pretty quick item.
Okay.
Hopefully.
All right. So I wanted to note that. The other thing I wanted to note, just as a follow-up, I think Councilmember Ciro asked last time, just to make sure we get this noted, that we do have now on our planning schedule for June 1st the next consideration of the moratorium. It would expire right now, if you stick with the 4 months, it'll expire June 16th, so this would give you an opportunity to revisit it after a lot of the community engagement that we've got planned has been done, and then you can decide going into the middle of June whether you want to continue it or change it at that point. And then the other thing is that shifted since the last time you saw this is it looks like we're going to do our joint meeting with the school board on April 30th. We're still putting together an agenda for that meeting, but that date has changed, so that's a new date, so note that.
What was it? What date was it?
It was April 16th.
Which the school board asked us to.
Yeah, and the school board didn't have some availability, so they asked to move it to the 30th. All right, thank you.
No, the VFW, the Masons, and Lions, I guess, have asked that I ask you to put the fireworks ordinance for April.
For April?
April.
Okay, all right, yeah, well, I'll work on that. Okay.
And I think it's the right time now for us to go ahead and start shopping dates for our mini planning session in June so that we get that on the calendar early. So if you could work with staff to
Yes.
float some dates
Yeah.
on that, that'd be good.
Yeah, Allie and I will sit down and map that out and get you some ideas. Okay, thanks.
Okay, that's planning schedule, board appointments. We have none. I will say we've got another Arts Council applicant. I've given a thumbs up from my perspective to that person, so it'll come to you at the next meeting. And so that's on its way. And now we move to council member reports. Benson, you want to begin?
None.
That was quick.
Well, I can't.
All right.
It was only last week. I mean.
You're so busy.
Debbie?
None.
Mike?
I've got a couple of things. I know, just you can imagine why, but I know there's a lot of open record requests going on there. Can you give me a summary of where we are with the record requests as far as what the request is, dates submitted, and date we anticipate they're going to be out?
Yeah, I can follow up with that. What I can tell you is we have probably one of the largest volumes right now that we've had for
It goes
a long
in.
time.
It goes in
Yeah,
cycles.
So let me. Well, yes, at least in my time here. So
Can I just check in, because Ally is in here, and as the public records officer, are you asking for her to line out like how many she has, or like what the wait time can be?
No, I'm sure she has a spreadsheet. I should hope that we're tracking it some way, a spreadsheet that says,
She does.
yeah, we have a spreadsheet.
Right.
That's what I was thinking we'd get to you.
Okay.
great.
I just wanted to clarify what that was, so she can do it quickly.
Yeah, I'll share with everyone.
I'd say just for the sake
Sure.
of
Okay.
clarity, just with everyone.
Yeah, I think that would be good for everyone to know. The other thing is, Bruce, I read your book.
Oh,
Thank you. And if it wasn't for me reading that book or you sharing that book with it, I wouldn't know to ask about offsets on your vacation, but it's none of my business, but I'm sure that
That caught me out.
I'm sure that you've offset that carbon footprint appropriately.
Very good, but this is an opportunity for me to say, hey, Mike, there's still time to invest in the solar installation.
Well, it's interesting you led that up. That solar project cost $375,000, and with a $5,600 electricity buyback annually that you're going to get from it, it's going to take 67 years to pay it back. Except with the subsidies that come from folks out there, middle-class folks, and it's a terrible waste of government, terrible waste of government funds. That a project that takes 64 years to pay back can actually pencil out is a shame, and hopefully it won't stay hopefully that type of subsidy philosophy won't stay like that for too long.
All right.
No.
All right. Deputy Mayor.
As I emailed all of you about the Sound Cities wanting to make some decisions or wanting to take a vote on the issue of the Committee to End Homelessness strategic plan, and essentially it's going to be discussed at two sessions, but at the upcoming PIC meeting, Mercer Island's going to be asked where they stand on various issues. This is one of those issues where this is a tough one for Mercer Island, because fortunately we don't have a significant homeless issue based upon the feedback that I've already gotten from staff. But the region definitely has a huge homelessness problem, and as a member of as a city within the region, we obviously have an obligation to work with our regional partners to try to address it. And just tonight, coincidentally, we approved the ARCH funding which is one of the things we do towards addressing the homelessness issue. But there are specific parts of this strategic plan that would ask governments to take certain actions, and I think it's, for example, and I think I mentioned this at the meeting last week, is that one of the requirements is that cities repeal or mitigate local ordinances that criminalize people for being homeless. And what I've been told is that is intended to cover ordinances, for example, which would result in people being arrested for sleeping in the park. And that's, the city of Redmond has already voiced significant concerns about that, and I guess other cities will voice concerns, but what I need to understand from the council how strongly we feel about this. I mean, fortunately, it has not been an issue, and this plan doesn't require us to do anything, but it's going to put us in an awkward position if, in fact, other municipalities do go forward with that, and then we said that we're in favor of this, and then we end up saying, but not us. So, I mean, we have the right to say we object to that, and that's perfectly appropriate for us to do that for our own public safety reasons, and Ed may want to speak to that, or Noel may want to speak to that from a staff standpoint, but I need some guidance from the council. This is going to probably be one of the more contentious ones. I'll go through some of the others, but this will clearly be one of the more contentious ones.
Let me suggest something, and this is repeating what was said to me, but when I went on to the SCA several years ago as our representative, Jim Pearman, our former mayor, said to me, his bit of guidance was simply, there are a lot of issues here which they're not core issues for us, but they are for somebody else. And his comment was, don't gore anybody's sacred ox, because it's best for us to be collaborative with our neighbors and supportive of them in their needs, and expect that in exchange they will be supportive of us when an issue becomes a core issue for us. So with that guidance, my suggestion would simply be take a flexible perspective to this, listen to what others have to say, and be supportive of what you're hearing from those who are directly impacted, since we have the great fortune to not be directly impacted by this. Now, that's my own comment. Debbie?
I think, the danger that I feel right here is, for better or for worse, I don't have a detailed understanding of what the potential implications are. You raise one, which is interesting and potentially significant. I don't know, and so, I'm also wondering, are there other interpretations or other concerns that other municipalities have, either pro or against? So I feel with the limited information I have right now, I'm in a very difficult position to say, don't gore the other person's ox or the ox.
Yeah.
Or something.
Not sure that's really, I may have messed up that.
I got what you meant.
The idea.
I got what you meant, but since I don't understand the implications of it, so I guess, Dan, question: by when do we have to provide you guidance for you to vote?
Today. There's an SCA meeting, I think it's a week from Wednesday is the next one, a PIC meeting. It won't be finalized at then, but the PIC is being asked to provide staff with input that can be finally voted on a month later at the PIC meeting. Then that goes to the SCA board for final action. It's, I don't know. I just read you what's in here. I don't know how broad that would be interpreted. Would it extend to vagrancy laws? I mean, it could go beyond that. And so I'm a little bit. I wish I could give you better answers than what I've got here. But I'm
Well, I don't know why I don't understand what all the hee-haw about. I mean, we don't want transients in our sleeping overnight in our parks, on our park benches. I mean, we don't want that. There are other places other social places where they can sleep. And very familiar with this. You might not think so, but I've done the overnight homeless count, and on the last line here, CEH negatively affected the work of CEH for the recession. Well, during the recession and right after the recession, the homeless count actually went down. I do a lot of business with the Millionaires Club, a lot of business. Actually, so much so where management visited me the other day and we got talking. And 75% of the millionaires at I'm speaking of the Millionaires Club, 75% of the Millionaires Club come from out of state. It'll be the same thing. If you open your parks and park benches and whatnot and don't enforce health and welfare rules and regulations and laws, you will become a haven. Just like Seattle, that's why, there's a couple reasons why why Seattle's having a homeless problem. Seattle is a known destination point for people out of state to come and use their services. When I was at the CH, this is what I'd like you to bring out, is that CEH needs to be more proactive in finding jobs, not just in the local area, but in the outside, throughout the country. I mean, that's the beauty, the power of America, is that people pick up and go to where the jobs are. I mean, with unemployment at 2% in the Dakotas and out in the flyover states, there's no reason why we shouldn't have why CEH shouldn't have an active program to find jobs for especially able-bodied single men, and they don't have that. And you start talking about that, and it's as if you're penalizing or speaking outside a proverbial box of taking care of folks that are down and out. So I don't think there's any, Dan, we don't want to loosen up these, what do you call them? What do you call these rules?
Rules that criminalize homelessness.
Yeah, we don't want to loosen those things up. Not for the health and welfare of our islanders and the beauty that we have on this island. And we want to support those communities like Redmond who also don't want to loosen up those rules.
That's it.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if staff has had time to weigh in. I know that PIC has, I guess, pared everything down into a shorter, statement of what municipalities might be looking at. But no, have you had a chance to?
No, we really haven't, which has been part of the challenge when things like this come up with SCA, and it's difficult for us unless it is a core issue for us really to dive in. The main input we got back in bouncing this off of Ed is just we as an island have not historically seen a problem with homeless on the island very much, so that hasn't been something that we faced like other cities. But other than that, we haven't really looked at it.
So I think that there are two parts of this thing. One is what Mike refers to, which is the issue of not doing things in your community which would attract the homeless, and putting it in a nutshell. And that would be like loosening laws, like another part of this thing is adding more shelter capacity. We have no shelter capacity at all now within Mercer Island that I'm aware of. So that's one part of it. Another part, though, is encouraging affordable housing, and we've done some things in that regard already. One of the goals of the CEH is to particularly target affordable housing for people below the 30% of median income. If I'm not mistaken, our policy has generally been in the 40 or 50% is what we've targeted in our ordinances. So I think it's going to be a very difficult discussion here on the council and with the community to say we want to become a magnet for the homeless. I just don't see the community supporting us in that approach. I do think, though, in all the discussions we've had, not all discussions, in many discussions we've had with the community, that there's generally been support for affordable housing. And it may be that the approach that I should take on behalf of the city is to say, we are not in favor of a policy which encourages homelessness, but we're in favor of a policy which either through work efforts or through affordable housing tries to address homelessness in that way, and not in trying to encourage is the wrong word, try to do things which might turn our community into a magnet for homelessness.
We've got to walk the talk there, Dan. We had the opportunity to create affordable housing at a rate that was, what's our regulation say, 60%? I think it's at 60% King County median income. And with the pressure of legacy, we did a development agreement to make it 85% King County median income. So, and also I would like for the folks listening out there, we do a lot vis-a-vis Arch. Okay, so it makes no sense. If you're interested in maximizing the number of beds or apartments for the homeless, it doesn't make sense to come on Mercer Island because property is so expensive and real estate is so expensive, you're not going to get the bang for your buck. So the way we compensate for that is through Arch, a regional coalition of housing.
Mike, I'm not asking to get into the specifics of it tonight. I'm just saying that we need to take a position on overall strategic policy. It may be that
we do have a regional policy.
We provide $20,000 to Arch. I don't think anyone would suggest that is a major effort to support affordable housing, with all due respect. And it may be that if we're going to go down this, if we're going to eventually, if we're asked to do more to deal with homelessness, it may require putting more than $20,000, and maybe Arch is the vehicle to do it, and they may decide that they don't want to do housing on Mercer Island for the reason you gave. They have done projects in the past on Mercer Island, which the city has supported, and they may yet do another project on the city, depending on what's available. But all I'm saying is that what I'm holding out for the council is the opportunity to say, okay, we support those parts of the strategic plan which will promote affordable housing. But we're not prepared to support those parts which are, which would attract homeless to the island. Or we take, Bruce's approach, which is equally palatable, just say, just do, as former Mayor Pearman would have suggested.
Other comments?
Well, we still have 2 weeks, maybe.
The PIC meeting before the 16th.
Oh, okay. Well, we have less than 2 weeks, but perhaps we need to, provide Dan, who's representing us at the PIC, to, send him ideas or where our positions are on some of these issues, because it is kind of, when cities are asked to state their position, a number of cities will say, well, we haven't had a chance to talk about this before the city council. But, here we have an opportunity to at least provide Dan some guidance as far as what our feelings are. We may not have consensus, but I think it, serves our representative. We need to help our representative, Dan, whoever, to at least have an idea of where we stand. I mean, I just...
Well, and this is the forum to do it. To shoot an email after this, I mean, our citizens need to know how we feel about it. So this is the forum to do it. To shoot an email after the fact.
Sure, but I mean, I guess if we should go ahead and go through all the issues then. I mean, I guess, Dan, frankly, I don't have the thing in front of me, so I feel kind of, I don't know if everybody has the issues that were...
No, and as you know, I mean, we've all been a bit focused on
I
moratorium at this point and not on this. So I think that's perfectly fair that we're a bit behind the curve on this one. Yeah. So I guess I'm supportive of what you suggested, Dan, which is, I mean, clearly we have a history of being supportive of ARCH and the concepts of affordable housing and housing opportunities for those in need. So I think it's relatively easy for us to say this would be an extension of that existing support. Whereas some of the other measures, my sense would be it would be reasonable for you to be more circumspect and allow others to take the lead on those issues, and we take a following position and leave it to your good sense as to exactly how you play those as they come on. So that seems to make sense to me. And are others okay with that? Yes. Okay.
Well, he's going to be asked to vote on something.
Yes, he is.
He's going to be asked to vote on something. And one of the things that he's going to be asked is to repeal or mitigate local ordinance that criminalize people for being homeless, i.e. vagrancy type laws that he talked about and everything. And what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I would want him to vote on that as if it was an issue for us in the immediacy, if we had an issue with that. So I would want him not to vote to repeal or mitigate those local ordinances that give cities the authority to enforce vagrancy laws.
And I would argue the cities who are dealing with the problem today are in a position to understand the exact details of what's going on and how to deal with it, and they're the ones who need to make the decision on how to deal with it.
But that's not how SCA works. That's not how SCA works.
No, but I'm saying that those are the folks in the trenches who are in the best position to try and figure out the best way through this. We should allow those folks the room to do that and be supportive of their ends rather than wading in with a presumption of how it should be solved. Because we have this luxury of not having to face that problem ourselves.
But Bruce, he's going to have a vote on it.
I understand.
So are you telling him to abstain from it?
No, I'm telling him if the majority of cities he's seeing the conversation is trending towards here's the logical answer to this. We, the cities who are confronting the problem, think that this is the answer. He should say, fine with me. I'm voting with you on that.
Well, I mean, we read the newspaper. We're aware of the homelessness problem, and we can make policy with that. We don't have to be living it firsthand. I mean,
I guess I'm just not of the opinion that we need to make policy that, at the end of the day, is academic for us, but is directly impactful on other cities. So that's the nuance I'm trying to highlight here. But I don't, at the end of the day, we're a bit bogged down here, and our vote probably at the end of the day won't really influence it. So let's keep this in perspective.
Yeah. Well, my understanding is that we can vote in support of it, but that doesn't mean that we have to adopt specific measures as a consequence of it. So, for us, we can vote in support of it, meaning that we think that it's very important to contribute to the stock of low-income housing, ARCH, any other mechanisms, et cetera, but we don't have to necessarily then support the repeal of vagrancy in our public parks, et cetera. So we're making a principled statement that we agree that there is progress to be made in how we treat the homeless process, but then we define our own path. So as long as our hands are not tied or bound, then I think, with Dan focusing his statements on what I would consider to be, the constructive elements, literally constructing low-income and no-income housing, then I don't know if I feel good, but I feel better about it because I don't feel obligated at the end of the day that means we're going to be opening up the island to
all right. Can we call this done?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. All right.
Dan, let me know Let me know how it comes out, please.
Cool.
Yes, I ended up meeting with some folks from the King Conservation District, and they are trying to develop some support for the various communities that are members of their district for their comprehensive plan update. And in addition to that, they are also developing a plan to hire somebody to help with urban forest plans, which I thought was relevant for our open space. So.
Okay. Jane?
Attended the SCA dinner the other night. Dow Constantine was the speaker, and one thing, he said a lot of things. It was a kind of a State of King County address. But one thing that really stuck out in my mind was the fact that he said 3/4 of county spending goes to the criminal justice system. So most of the money in the county goes to dealing with bad outcomes. And he said one initiative that he wants to focus on is putting money at the beginning of the system, focusing on the future of children. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see what comes from that. And I noticed that Jane Haig is coming in on the 16th, so it'll be interesting to see what she has to say about some of those programs. And that's it.
Okay. Noel, you want to? Nope. Okay. I just thought I'd give you a chance. I've been out of town. I don't have a report. There are a bunch of meetings I've got packed into this week, so we'll have more next time, but nothing new to report tonight. So with that, if there's nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you.